as like original recipe. But that's kind of, I find, just depends. If you want to add this, you can. If not, it really isn't going to affect the drink too much since you already have orange botanicals in it. So yeah, this is an Amaro from France. They actually make 3 different styles of it. One of them was a fresh ginger maceration into it that was unbelievable. But I ended up they stopped distributing it to the US about 6 months ago, unfortunately. So we have this orange, the ginger one, and then they have another one called Fleur de Joie, which is almost more of a floral approach to the Amaro. So this is some of my favorites. This is just what I have at home right now. I don't have any of the big brand name ones that I recommended to you guys just right now because I've frankly been drinking all of my bar. But this is one of my favorites. We'll get into that a little bit more. So let's start with Manhattan, eh? So we all know to stir, not shake a Manhattan, correct? This, once again, when it comes to bartending, people do it any way they want. When you're at home, I don't care. You know, you shouldn't care unless you really, really want to present it in a way that you would get it at a craft cocktail bar. You know, to me, it all comes down to preference of taste, which is why I gave you, I said pick your favorite rye whiskey. All of these different Amaros, or if you were to still use vermouth in a classic, they all pair very well with what whiskey you want. So if you have a higher, I'm using Willet, which is my favorite current rye whiskey on the market. It's a 4-year from a very small production distillery, very hot. So it's going to be very spice driven, like a lot of ryes are, but also because it's running at 109.8 proof, it just has a little bit more of a backbone, which I tend to like in my Manhattans. Anyways, I'm getting out. So let's start. If you guys want, and you have orange bitters at home, feel free to throw them in. I'm going to leave them out because my Amaro, as I said, very similar to Averna, already has citrus in it. So I don't really think I need to punch it a little bit more. So I'm just going to start with what would be a classic base, which is going to be Angostura, just aromatic bitters. One of the most popular bitters used for sure around the globe. A lot of bartenders refer to it kind of as like the salt and the pepper of the drink. Yeah, so 2 to 3 dashes, pretty much all you need. But once again, this is all based on your taste. We are using a bitter instead of a vermouth. So if you're someone who likes that heavy on Angostura and you tend to add more than recipes call for, I would say maybe tone it down to just like 2 or 3 because you are going to get some more bitter notes from the Amaro this time. So I'm going to do 3 dashes of that deliciousness. And then it's traditional Manhattan. Actually, some of the oldest recipes call for a little bit more sweet vermouth rather than that like 2 to 1. When I say 2 to 1, that means like the ratio. So 2 ounces, for example, of whiskey to 1 ounce of Amaro. So we're just going to do that classic approach, and whatever Amaro you're using, grab your jigger, or if you don't have a jigger, you can use like a measuring cup. But we're going to do 1 ounce of the Amaro. And then 2 ounces of whatever whiskey you like. As I said, most of the classics do call for rye whiskey because it does have more of a punch. But if you guys have bourbon at home or Canadian whiskey or American style whiskey, use whatever honestly you like. Because once again, we're at home. We're not trying to press anyone.
What about Irish whiskey?
Yeah, dude, Irish whiskey, hell yeah. I love Irish whiskey. I love Scotch whiskey. A lot of times if you throw in these different whiskeys, like there are some classics that are very similar, like Rob Roy is almost a Scotch Manhattan, but thrown in with a little bit of an herbal liqueur called Benedictine. One of my favorite classics, kind of riff on a Manhattan is great. So it really just depends on what whiskey you have at home, what you like. And once again, if you start to learn more about Amari, you can decide, well, this Amaro pairs very well with this whiskey, and then you kind of find what your own home Manhattan would be, so to speak. So back to the whiskey, I'm going to do 2 ounces of the Willet Rye whiskey or whatever whiskey you're using. Very nice. And that's it. So easy. So just grab your ice. So I'm using a stirring. This is a mixing glass. You don't have a mixing glass at home. If you have a tin, you can use that. You can use a pint glass. Really doesn't matter. Usually, you're going to see like a glass mixing glass, which Doug actually has a good example you can see on his screen. That's usually what we use. Unfortunately, mine are all at my bar because we break all of ours. So right now, I just have a stainless steel one. Really doesn't matter. But I'm going to grab some ice now, and we're just going to dilute our cocktail. Obviously, so I'm just gonna throw in this little speck of knowledge. Does anyone know what the most important part of bartending is? Anyone? What's the most important ingredient or thing used in bartending?
Love. Love.
Love? That's good. Anyone else want to guess?
Ice.
Ice.
There you go. So water.
No.
It's kind of boring and ridiculous, but water is the most important thing when it comes to it's from everything to how much we're diluting the cocktail to what kind of ice we're using, how it's served. I'm using this crappy, refrigerator ice. So it's not going to be nearly as like what we use at bars referred to as cold draft. It's usually like a perfect cube, right? Because we have consistency with shaking, we have consistency with stirring. And we can know sometimes without even looking or keeping track, we know this is almost how long we need to dilute. So because I have this crappy ice, I'm going to check my drink a few times. But when it comes to dilution, specifically with stirring, it's more about we're mixing these ingredients together in a more smooth approach. You want that almost like silky texture. And people talk about shaking versus stirring when it comes to like martinis, right? If you want to aerate something, typically with fresh juice or and sweetener to balance, you're going to shake that and really like mix it up. But when we're doing stirred cocktails, we more want that silky, velvety texture, which you'll get with stirring rather than like really shaking up and mixing it. So I would, depending on how long you've been stirring, check your Manhattan. At this point, if you think it's too strong, feel free to add more of your Amaro. If you want a little bit more of like that bittersweet, feel free to add that. If you like what you got, go ahead and strain it out into your glass. I prefer my Manhattans up. Now that is traditionally what I would say most places are going to serve. However, once again, if you prefer to drink your cocktails, specifically something as heavy or as potent as a Manhattan, feel free to put it over ice on the rocks. Obviously, we don't all have fancy big cubes as you see a lot more popular in cocktails nowadays. But if you are going to serve it over the rocks, try to use like bigger, large format ice because it slows the dilution and it's just a really nice touch. Once again, if you've got crappy ice, use crappy ice. Now, a traditional garnish with a Manhattan is going to be cherry, right? I prefer the Luxardo cherries, which are those deep, kind of deeper flavored, sometimes brandy cherries. However, I'm not a cherry man, so I'm gonna take just an orange and peel it. And what I'm gonna do here is just taking the peel away, and I'm gonna express the oils over the top of the drink. And what that does is enhance the orange that's already in the Averna or Amaro that I'm using, as well as gives you a nice aromatic approach before you even get to the drink. So you have this citrusy bright before you get right into the cocktail. Once again, at Billy Sunday, we like to ask if you prefer cherry or an orange. If they prefer one or the other, we do that. Or if not, our classic, our specs is that we actually do both. We do the cherry for classic and then just spritz it up with a little bit of orange to kind of open that up. So that's it. Cheers, everyone. Black Manhattan.
Cheers!
Cheers! Yes.
We could actually cheers.
Yeah, we could.
Getting ahead of you, person.
This is good. This is very good.
You like?
Jeremy, I'm converted.
Yeah.
This is slipped up over
regular Manhattans for me now.
Yeah,
Ooh.
there you go.
Jeremy, you should know that Aaron was not an Amaro person at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, honestly, it's funny.
Let
I
me
knew almost
caveat
nothing.
that. Oh, I'm not a fruity Amaro person.
Okay.
Herbal Amaros are my jam.
Okay, so you like the Alpine styles. Yeah. Do you want to, how's everyone else's Manhattans? Everyone good?
Very nice.
Yeah,
Great.
this stuff actually worked pretty well. It's
So everyone enjoying their drinks. You can try
Yeah.
another Amaro later.
Delicious.
Awesome. I'm so glad. Well, I think, we'll take a moment to thank Jeremy for a good drink, but then after that we should just geek out on Amaro for a little while. I'd love to talk about different families, different kinds of Amaro. I know, like, for a lot of the non-professionals here, this might be the first time you've ever thought about Amari. Like, it's not really a thing. So I think, yeah.
What is an Amaro? Like, how do you define it, or what makes a drink an Amaro versus some other drink?
So Amaro, oh boy. So Amaro is actually the largest, it's the largest section in all of spirits and liqueurs. It is so huge and so hard to narrow down because there are no governmental restrictions on how it's made. So that being said, I could go out, I live in Humboldt Park, Chicago. I could go out and forage for some like barks, roots, herbs, flowers, macerate it into a base, and once it's ready, sell it as a Humboldt Park Amaro, right? So that's kind of, but it can be boiled down to, as I said before, either a neutral grain spirit. When I say neutral grain, we're talking like Everclear or vodka, something along those lines. And then a maceration of typically what's in the region around where the Amaro is being made. So once again, we were talking about Averna, very classic, is they're going to use those local, the citrus, and then they're going to throw in whatever bittering agents. A lot of Amaro, we don't know exactly what they're putting in it because a lot of these recipes date back to a long time ago, and it's almost like a secret of the trade, right? There are only a few products that actually figured out what macerations go into it. Does everyone know what I'm saying maceration a lot? Does everyone know what that means in regards to like booze?
No.
Yeah. No?
Sounds dirty.
Infusion, essentially. You're letting, how we make like bitters or Amaros, let's very simple. If I'm going to take this Everclear as a neutral grain and I'm going to pick 3 flowers and 2 roots, I throw that into that container and just let it sit. And what it's going to do over time, because that high content of alcohol, is it's going to slowly pull out the flavors of whatever is in there. Now, Amaro, being one of the oldest liqueurs ever produced, dating back to ancient Mesopotamian times, is essentially just pulling ingredients out of something and making essentially a bittersweet liqueur. Now, most people probably know the most popular Amaro of all time is Fernet Branca. I'm sure maybe you guys have heard of it, but it's in San Francisco, kind of is when the US kind of took off with it, but it's a very bitter, medicinal, dry Amaro. And maybe you guys know chartreuse. Chartreuse, really old school style of French herbal liqueur, is also an Amaro, just a style of Genovese. There's so many different styles because there's no restrictions on this that you've got everything. Say again?
Do you consider Jägermeister to be an Amaro? Because when I was looking it up, they said that and I kind of laughed.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you how because you said that was a German bitter, how resemblant to Jaeger that is.
It's pretty much the same. It's a little sweeter. Huh?
That's sweeter than Jägermeister.
No. It's pretty sweet. It's viscous. It's very Jaegery.
Very Jaegery. Okay. Actually,
is an Amaro?
it is. It is. It is a
There it
wormwood
is.
Amaro.
Jeremy,
don't
do
serve that in our
you serve
bar.
Jaeger bombs at Billy Sunday?
No Jaeger bombs. We don't really do bombs at Billy Sunday.
They do Averna bombs because they're fancy.
But actually, fun fact, one of my favorite vintage bottles I've ever tasted at Billy Sunday was a Jägermeister from the 60s. It was so good.
German Jägermeister is not as sweet as the one you buy in the US, but it's still sweeter.
Really?
It's pretty harsh. I remember it from Germany. There's Underberg too. Eric, do you remember Underberg?
Wunderberg, yeah. You can buy that in Chicago a lot too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the little ones.
Oh yeah, Underberg. Yeah, that's a little shot thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
Nice.
you can
Jeremy,
get
do you
them
want
at
to
beer
talk
bars
about
here in New
families?
York
Are
because
there
they're
like
not
families
regulated.
of Amaro, or like are there kinds of like, you know, because when I think like Italian Amaros, I'm usually thinking of like the ones that we have here, right? Or like
Yeah.
like you said, there's like the Genepi style Amaros. Like, are there different kind of like loosely like different families of Amaro that we can look at?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll go through like a spectrum for you guys. Kind of make it as easy as possible. Oh man, this makes me miss being behind the bar.
I miss you being behind the bar too, Jeremy.
So I'll start with a very popular one that everybody should know. I said Fernet and someone shook their head, but Campari. Everyone knows Campari or Aperol, I assume at this point.
Yeah.
That is what the lightest category, which a lot of people refer to as aperitivo. But what you need to know is that aperitivo and digestivo are one and the same. It's not like what style of drink it is, it's at what time during the day. So if I drink Campari before noon, it's an aperitivo. If I drink Campari afternoon, it's a digestivo, right? Or after a meal. So that was something I got really confused with until our like master Amaro guy was like teaching us. But it's really about how you enjoy it. If you're drinking like Campari and soda, that's going to be more of like an aperitivo style, right? It's light, it's low ABV. Whereas you're drinking a Negroni, you have that backbone of gin and sweet vermouth added. So that's more of maybe something you would enjoy after a nice meal. But Amaro initially started as a tonic, a digestive tonic, which people use in regards to like blood pressure and just like sickness in general.
Fernet, my mom would give me Fernet when I was a kid when I had a tummy ache. And
Oh, you lush, you lush.
Did it work?
absolutely. I didn't care anymore. I might have loved it.
It worked, and then it made her stop complaining about it.
Yeah, so Campari, Aperol, that's a category we would call bitters di Torino. That actually a precursor to that style, but the same. It just has been adapted. Used to be called. Oh boy, I should know this. It's been a month since I've been. There's another name for it, but it essentially dates back to as I was talking like ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian times. But in Egypt, what they did is they were taking this essentially a sweet wine punch is what it started out with, and they would macerate everything that they could find. Now, they were so obsessed with their wealth at this time that they were macerating pearls, diamonds, jewels, gold. Yeah, because they wanted to quote unquote drink their wealth. That's how cool and amazing and rich these people were. But people,
I've got a bottle of it in the back. It tastes like crap though.
Alchemez. That's the precursor. And maybe the most modern rendition of that might be Cappelletti Aperitivo, if you've ever tasted that. But it was typically sweeter. Now a lot of these people died and realized that maybe macerating their wealth into this punch wasn't a good thing. So we fast forward a few hundred years to it was the late 1870s. A guy named Gaspar Campari decided to take this sweet liqueur and add in bittering agents, and that's where we kind of got to like bittering agents to balance, and that's how we ended up with like bitters di Torino. So that's a very popular section. I'm sure everyone's had an Aperol Spritz, right? I mean, in the last 2 years, Aperol's marketing campaign has been ridiculous.
Yeah.
But fantastic and delicious. So that you're gonna find with that more like light and citrus-driven notes typically, while still having those bittering agents. Anyone have any questions about that category?
No, this is really helpful.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got a question. So, like, is there like a difference between, say, like fortified wines like vermouth versus Amaro? Is like Amaro always some sort of like grain spirit?
No. Once again, it's difficult. So back in the day, it was typically brandy was the base, and then wine. Wine a little bit more common, or a little bit less common, but it's very similar to a fortified wine process. Like the making of it is very, very similar. A lot of vermouths have the same bittering agents, but are typically just with those wine base, which adds a little bit more obviously of like that fruit character and lighter notes to it. Whereas if you're using that like a grain spirit or a brandy, it typically is going to be a little bit higher in ABV and packs a little bit more of a punch behind it.
So I think you were walking us through kind of like all the families of Amaro, and I think there's a couple more. But are there like iconic representatives of each family? Like obviously Campari is like the Campari family, right?
Sure.
You know, like if you're gonna stock a home bar and be like, yo, I want a little bit of everything. What's the jam?
Yeah. So with definitely in the bitters di Torino category, I don't like Campari. Sue me if you want to.
No,
But I think it's just too bracingly bitter for my palate. So instead of Campari, some of my favorites that I use are going to be Cappelletti Aperitivo. It's a little bit sweeter. There's one of my favorite companies. If you're not familiar with them, get familiar with them. Is called Tempest Fugit Spirits. It's a Swiss-made product, but what they specialize in is taking these really old school recipes and researching them for at least a year, and then like really, really intensely researching it, and then putting out a product that is just incredibly thoughtful and as resemblant to that old recipe as they can without changing as much as they can. So there's a product called Grand Classico. Unfortunately, I just drank. Oh, hold on, I'll be right back.
Hello.
So Jeremy, I'm gonna quote you on that because I hate Campari too.
Oh, it's just not. It's just not.
It's cough syrup. It makes everything into cough syrup.
It ruins every drink. For me, it's like just below Malort in terms of like awful.
That's Colleen. However, people should know that Colleen is the Malort pusher.
Right? But you take a shot of Malort. You weren't forced to like drink a whole drink with Campari, like Malort in it, like you are with Campari.
I'm glad you're a Malort pusher. I think we're going to be friends.
I am a Malort pusher.
But I mean, yeah, it's kind of funny too because Jeremy, the last one we did was Americanos, which is like, you know, it's a third Campari.
Yep.
But it's a good time. It's a good time.
Listen, this is what I think. This does not mean it's right. And once again, this all comes down to opinion and what your taste buds are. It took me, it's blasphemous to say, working in the top like Amaro bar in America, one of the top, I mean, is that I don't like Fernet. I don't like it. And it's blasphemous to say because we have over 200 vintage bottles of Fernet. And someone asks me what the drink, I'm like, no, not like, I don't want Fernet. But anyways, getting back to it, this is what I use at home.
Well, that's good stuff. Yeah. And their
So
Tempest Fusion Sakina is also super good.
What is
Yes.
Tempest Fusion Sakina is also
Wait,
good.
what was it called?
This is Grand Classico.
Excellent.
This is once again from that Swedish company, Tempest Fugit. Now one of the main reasons I don't like Campari is because they're using red dye number 40 in it, right? So I don't really want to drink that. Originally, that category was used Cochinella beetles as its like for the color. So I don't know if you can see this. It's not that bright red. It's more of like a like orangish dark hue. You can, when you look at something like an aperitivo like this, and you can see that it's not just bright, obviously a translucent red, that means they're most likely using natural products in it. And once again, this is just a little bit less potently bitter. So for my taste, it's got a better like mouthfeel, and just a touch sweeter than you would find in Campari. And I find at Billy Sunday we use this instead of Campari. Unless someone calls for it, we're not gonna put Campari in the drink.
This is
Just
why
because-
I love Billy Sunday.
Yeah, be regulars, dude.
Still in gummy bears, still red Cochonel.
Yeah. I mean, so this is what
It's red 40 all the way. Red 40.
if
It's
I
very
were to
stable
stop
in
one
confectionery.
aperitivo, it would be this. So next would be the light section of Amaro. Probably light and medium are it's like open discussion, but Averna, Montenegro, you were drinking Cardamaro. Sorry, Leah, is that your name? Cardamaro, if you want to hold that up and show anyone who's looking, is by
so
far
good.
one of my favorites in the light style. So it's much lighter. It is a vino. You'll see vino based. That means it's a wine based, which once again, it's going to be a little bit more like fruit, a little lighter, a little sweeter, and some more of those fruit characteristics. That's going to make such a beautiful Manhattan because it's just like light, delicious, and fantastic. Love using that. Also is like in a spritz form. It's really, really delicious. So I would actually say Cardamaro would be my number one light bodied Amaro. And then if we move to medium, I would say what I'm using right here. Once again, very similar to Averna, just a French-made Amaro, which they pronounce it Amer, one and the same, just meaning bitter. But this is just the three products that I mentioned before that they make are just absolutely incredible and fantastic and delicious. So this is Wolf Amer, if you guys want to see the label. Medium is the biggest section because there's just so many different styles of people like making it. As simply as it sounds, medium bitter, medium sweet. So a good balance of the sweetness to those botanicals in there. Then move on to Genepi. As I said before, chartreuse is probably the most popular Genepi. So as we move like down this spectrum, you're gonna start to see a little bit more like almost like flavor expressions in different iterations. So this one's gonna be a little bit more herbal and floral. So they're typically taking more mountainous region botanicals and macerating that into a base. Green chartreuse is the most popular, although they make a beautiful kind of like sweet baby sister, a yellow chartreuse that is a little bit sweeter, a little bit less hot, and just like more notes of like honey. Someone had Zucca. Doug, you had Zucca. If you want to show everyone that bottle. This is what we use in our old fashions, Zucca Rabarbaro. So another style, Rabarbaro. The main bittering agent in that is Chinese rhubarb. And it's not the rhubarb us Americans know and see and taste. It's not very fruity like that. It's a little bit more earthy and almost like dirty in a way. But they macerate that into more of like a fruit kind of base. So you have a really nice, almost like earthy dark fruit Amaro. Zucca is probably the most popular. Although Capoletti just released a product a few years back called Sfumato, which is a very smoky rendition of a Rabarbaro. They did not filter it, so it's going to be a little bit less like pretty if you're just pouring it by itself. But it just like adds such a flavor of like smoke and earthiness that is just really, really cool to play in cocktails if you like that sort of thing, if you like peaty scotches or peaty mezcals. And then one of the last few categories would be Alpine. Has anyone ever had Braulio Amaro before? Braulio is, we call it like Bay at Billy Sunday because our previous beverage director, she was obsessed with it. But and we love it there. But it's an herbal approach once again, so similar to Genepi, only it's further down the spectrum, so you're gonna get much more bitter notes to it. Alpine is exactly how it sounds. They're either gonna source ingredients from the Alpinist regions, or 9 times out of 10, because Amaro is usually, other than these big boys, is a small family-owned production. is that they're going out in their backyard and picking these flowers and these herbs and roots off of the side of the mountain in their land, and then they're macerating. So a much more herbal quality, just fantastic, really, really delicious. We do a riff on a daiquiri at Billy Sunday that splits Braulio and Sfumato, that like smoky rhubarb Amaro, and it's just like bitter and sweet and light and refreshing, really, really fantastic. And then last category, or last of the main categories, would be Fernet, as we talked about before. Fernet, despite what people say is an Amaro, one of the most popular, but that is going to be the most bitter side of the spectrum, right? We started with Campari with that light, sweet, citrusy. On the other side is Fernet. Very bitter, very medicinal. And the reason for that is they use an aloe or a resin called black aloe. And it's what gives it its color. It's what gives it that deep, deep bitterness. It took us a while to track down black aloe in its raw form at Billy, but we got some and essentially turned it into just like a tincture, just so we could taste what it was by itself. And if you put a drop of that on your tongue, your palate is wrecked for like at least an hour. So it's pretty crazy, but that's the main bittering agent in Fernet. And you'll find those are going to be sometimes like coffee, chocolate notes alongside these very like bitter tannins. So sorry to talk your guys' ears off, but that's the majority of kind of the spectrum when it comes to Amari. With so much history, most of these main big guys that you see, Averna, Montenegro, Fernet, Campari, they were able to last through the 80s. In the 80s, the bitter culture died, essentially. And that's because the younger generation in Italy, where the majority of digestifs were being consumed, they just didn't really care for the aperitivo culture. So it almost fell off the map. So in the 80s, you saw about 95% of these distilleries that were producing Amari, they closed. And it's very sad, but the few ones that did make it through were bought out by bigger companies, or they condensed what they were making into the most popular products. So Campari used to make cordials, liqueurs. All of these places used to make every kind of style that we just went over. But once it came down to essentially like how are they going to save their company, is they picked their most profitable product, and then kind of stuck with that one or two things that they used. So yeah.
Hey Jeremy.
Yeah.
In Germany, when you go to like Italian restaurants, when you go to an Italian restaurant or a pizza place afterwards, they'll ask you what you want for like a digestif, right? So it's usually like a ramazzotti with ice and lemon, or a Verna with ice and lemon, or grappa. But yeah, but that's different. So as far as those things go, and we were at the Queen Mary one time, and I was, I'll just have an Averna with ice and lemon, and the guy kind of looked at me. But I mean, is that like not the way to drink it, in your opinion?
Well, this is a fun question or comment, because I once spoke to there was these two Italian dudes that came in, and they tasted through hundreds of dollars worth of vintage stuff. And in the end, we were just having them like I was picking my favorite bottles, and I was like, decipher this for me. What does this say? And eventually, I was like, so how do you guys enjoy? Because first of all, there's no real way I can give you like the top 3 ways to do it, is what I found after talking to these guys. Is essentially you're going to have it neat, and once again, almost like in a little port glass, is typically how it's served after dinner to help kind of with that digestion, right? Then there's second most popular, which is going to be like you said, over a few cubes, some ice, and then an expression, if you like, of whatever fruit you want on top. Orange or lemon, probably the most two popular. But then lastly, and definitely the most popular way of how Amaro is consumed, is with soda water. So Doug's class of Americano he did last week was kind of was a cocktail that came about from just the traditional way of drinking the Amaro and soda. Amaro and tonic, a little bit less popular, but Amaro, soda, and a little bit of, once again, a lemon or orange peel is definitely probably the most popular way to enjoy it. But these guys said that you could literally order an Averna at 5 different cafes that are next door to each other, and no one will serve it. It's just how the bartender wants to give it to you or how you request it. So I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way. Just don't pour it in a shaker and shake the crap out of it. Maybe that's the wrong way.
Yeah, I want to take this great question. Talk about a couple things. One is, well, first off, I've said this before. I think it's a polite thing to tip your bartender. So please help our boy out, Jeremy. His Venmo is Jeremy-Barrett.3. Is that, or not dot? Sorry, dash. You just write it down. Just write it down, bro. We'll get that up. Please tip your bartender. It's a nice thing to do. Like if you were at a bar, you would not do this, or rather, you would not do this. And also, though, if you were at a bar, you would not get like 40 minutes of straight up masterclass level knowledge on Amaro.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Any tips and all is really great. But honestly, it's just fun to talk about this again because it's been so long.
Jeremy, do you want to write your memo out like on a piece of paper and just hold up the screen?
Oh yeah. Let me do that.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
You don't have a picture up, do you?
yeah.
Jeremy, this was awesome. And can you email out your recommendations for Amaro? That was great.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I'll send it to everyone on this crew.
Yeah, I would gladly do that.
Turn it Menta if you really have a cold. Like it's also good for coronavirus.
Yeah, Jeremy
He's the one with it.
Jeremy-Barrett-3.
Yeah. Let's see. 2 more things I want to do. One is, if anyone is on here, if anyone in here is in food and beverage, would you guys just introduce yourselves? Tell us what bar you're at, because one thing I want to do here is make regulars at every single bar, right? I mean, like, it's always a pleasure having you. So you guys can go whatever way you want. And then the last thing I'll do is talk about what we're doing next. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, who else is in the industry in this chat?
Well, I've worked with Jeremy at Green River / Annex. Hi, Jeremy.
I didn't know you were here. Hey, buddy.
Hey, I miss you. I miss your face.
The foam from your bed so zip goes.
How are we right
Hiya! Part of your punishment.
Oh, hey, how you doing? I miss your face too. All y'all faces.
How are we right now?
I'm currently at Mastro's Steakhouse, which is in River North. Dearborn and Grand are the main streets. I am currently serving and bartending whenever that happens again. But it's been great. I learned a lot. It's working at a nightclub. Vodka pays the bills. It's a true statement. It is a true statement.
Leah, do you want to talk about where you're at?
Yeah. So I just helped open up a bar called the Dandy Crown. It's we're in like a weird no man's land between neighborhoods in Chicago, but like the near west side kind of area, like Chicago Blue Line. And we're just like a cute little lounge. So as of right now with COVID and all that, we can't do anything because we don't have any food right now, but we're building stuff out gradually. So
what's it called again?
The Dandy Crown.
The Dandy.
There's no super cute story. Our owner is British, and it sounded kind of British to him. So.
And it's on Chicago Avenue?
It's on Milwaukee Avenue. So we're just south of the Blue Line station, but we're in between the Grand and Chicago stops.
By the Matchbox or whatever the match.
Yeah, just south of the Matchbox.
Yeah, okay.
Congrats on your nomination, by the way. You guys got nominated for something, right?
Yeah, it's super cute. And yeah, it's been a super cute list of best new bars.
Cool, congrats. That's awesome.
Gio, you want to go?
Let me unmute myself. I'm actually not a current bartender, but I used to bartend back in the day and then sort of transitioned onto the wholesale distribution side. And then after that, started my own company, representing a bunch of different craft distilleries. And Leah works for me part-time as well. So I'm going to be doing a virtual happy hour for you guys next week using cachaça, which is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caipirinha.
You guys work with John Hess and Colin Smythe, right? At Dandy Crown?
Yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah. 2 friends of mine. Yeah.
Love that.
I work at 2 places. I'm over at Series Table over in Lakeview, if you guys ever make it out here. Big cross streets, Broadway and Belmont, by the lake, are near the Laugh Factory, if you guys are familiar. And I also bartend at Saba Italian in Logan Square. Biggest cross streets there are Milwaukee and Kedzie, or if you've ever been to that McDonald's by the Logan Square Blue Line, like right next to that. And man, it really hurt me to hear the Campari stuff. I get it. Campari's bitter. I love Campari more. I don't know. I'm a bitter motherfucker.
I think I found through my time at Billy is that there are 2 kind of Amaro drinkers, and that's the people who hate Fernet and Campari and the people who love Fernet and Campari.
I love Fernet.
Yeah.
I think Bracamento is more interesting and has a lot more personality, but I just love Fernet. I love bitter shit. But
like, don't get me wrong. There are a few Fernets I've tasted that are unbelievably good.
Yeah.
But like, I think when it comes down to me, it's how I prefer to drink. If I just prefer to drink a spirit by itself or a liqueur by itself, if I can't do that without like making a face in public, then maybe that's how I decide it's not my jam. Fernet, I'm just like, every time I take it.
No, I wanted to ask you earlier. You said you did a split base daiquiri with split base tomato and Braulio. Is that right?
Oh yeah. So
what's the build on that? That sounds really fucking good. Like I fucking love tomato. Like that shit's amazing.
It's killer. It's killer.
It's so good.
So the build on that would be a ½ an ounce of gom syrup.
Okay. All right.
If you don't want to make a gom, which is it's like a prohibition style syrup incorporating fern, but you can do almost like just like bump I would use simple syrup and do 3/4 of an ounce.
Okay.
Because it's almost like a rich syrup, or the gom we use, the syrup we use is almost a 2-to-1 rich style syrup. But anyway, so we use half an ounce of the gom, and then 3/4 of fresh lemon juice, and then it's an equal split, an ounce of each of Braulio and Sfumato.
Amazing! Wow.
Dude, it's killer. And you work at Saba, so you should stop by sometime. I love Saba, by the way. I've eaten there a few times, but
hell yeah,
I'll stop by as well. But come on by and try it, because dude, it is so good. Oh, yeah, make it home.
Dude, I'm coming over there as soon as this shit ends. Like, I want to do that. Like last time I was at Billy Sunday, I was there with a couple of my coworkers from the aviary back when I worked there. I think I saw, what's her name, Katie something. Yeah, she's bartending. But I need to go there more, because I'm at Series 2 days a week, and then the rest of the week, like the other 4 days, I'm over at Saba. So yeah.
Guys,
and I wanted to ask your opinion. What's your take on balsamic in cocktails? I got really stoned last night because that's what you do in this quarantine. And I was thinking, what about this? It's a balsamic reduction from Trader Joe's called Glaze, and then agave. And I did equal parts that, 2-to-1 bill for that in water. And I just tried it in the cocktail that you made, and I really like it. Like, well, I don't know. It's weird. I'm not too well versed in using balsamic in cocktails, but I was feeling ambitious.
Let me hold on. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. One, again, is to talk about Lord Jeremy and his delightful demo, Jeremy-Barrett.3 or dash 3. Oh my boy. He's a good dude. And the next thing I want to talk about is what's coming up next. So unlike every other cocktail hour we've done a little bit of planning, mostly thanks to Chio here. So I want to talk about what's coming up next, like next week and the week after that. So next week we're going to have Chio talk about cachaça, which is super exciting. And I hope you guys have picked up your cachaça. And you know, like it's like a national thing in Brazil, right? And like
Yeah, so it's the national spirit of Brazil. And if you haven't gone and purchased yet, I would highly recommend Novo Fogo as the brand of choice. It's 100% organic. Everything's 100% sustainably produced. And it's also led by a female distilling team in the Brazilian rainforest. So really cool brand, but really awesome people behind the brand. And I'll be doing a caipirinha demo, and then I figured since Novo Fogo does a lot of barrel aged expressions, which aren't really that accessible. I think there's only like 2 other brands that have barrel aged expressions, but I thought we could do a play on an old fashioned using one of their barrel aged expressions too.
Nice.